Okay, it's a couple minutes after the hour. I'm sure there are people that will join us along the way. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bob McDonald from Preferred CFO, and welcome to our monthly webinar series. Today's webinar is entitled The Importance of a Company Establishing a Mission, Vision, and Values. Our distinguished presenter today is Mr. Tom Applegarth, who has 30 years of experience in human resources. Tom has experience serving at high-profile companies such as Amoco, Payless, and Shoe Source, also Goodyear Tire and Rubber. And Tom has been in HR for many, many years with business units, two of which had over $1 billion in revenue and more than 3,000 employees. Tom currently works for us at Preferred CFO as our VP of Human Resources. And once again, Preferred CFO provides outsourced HR, finance, and accounting and payroll services for companies. A couple housekeeping items. Be happy to take any questions today. Use the Q&A button at the bottom and type your question in there. We'll hold those to the end so that we can answer them thoroughly. If you have anything in particular that you'd like to talk to offline, just contact us either directly or through the chat. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Tom.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. So, mission, vision, values. Yogi Berra said, if you don't know where you are going, you'll end up someplace else. And I think that's a good quote to keep in mind, that with any company, it's good to help everybody in the organization understand, why do we exist today? And that's usually a company's mission statement. A vision, where are we going tomorrow? And then values, how will we behave along the way? And getting everybody to understand and agree to the mission, the vision, and values, it can be very powerful and really help a company develop the type of culture that they want to. A company's mission defines its present day purpose, the why behind its existence. It's good to align the effort. When employees understand why the company exists and whom it serves, their work takes on meaning. The alignment reduces wasted energy and helps people prioritize on what really matters. It helps customers understand the organization better and really can help the sales team and the marketing team as they're reaching out to customers to really define if a company has a clear, defined mission statement. It provides operational focus as well. It becomes a filter for decisions. Companies that have done a really good job in implementing their mission can often really look at major decisions that they're making, or even minor decisions that they're making, and ask the question as the group is making a decision, is this decision aligned with our mission? And that really helps keep the organization and employees on focus. Howard Schultz said, when you're surrounded by people who share a passionate commitment around a common purpose, anything is possible. So here's some example of some mission statements, just to kind of give you a feel for some well-known big organizations and what their mission statements are. So Google, our mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Apple, to bring the best user experience to customers through innovative hardware, software, and services. Meta, to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. And Amazon, to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, where customers can find and discover anything they may want to buy online, and endeavors to offer our customers the lowest possible prices. And these companies developed these mission statements when they were, and all of these companies have been startups in the last 20, 25 years. So they're all, they developed these mission statements fairly quickly in their development. And that really, really focused the entire company as they grew. As many of you may, or some of you may remember, And I certainly remember when Amazon first started, they were only selling books. That's all they were doing. But they had, even at that time, this mission statement, which definitely wasn't limited to books. It was that eventually we're going to sell a lot more than books. And 25 years later, they're the go-to for buying almost anything for most Americans and even many outside of America. So a mission statement can really help as an organization is growing, but even if it's a very mature organization, making certain that everybody understands the purpose for our existence, the mission statement, can be very powerful. So Google launched in the late 1990s. Um, I remember when Google first came about, there were all kinds of search engines, Alta Vista, Yahoo, Ask Jeeves, and many others. But many of them became cluttered with ads, directories, news portals, and really, search was just one of the things that they did. Google very deliberately kept the homepage clean and minimal, and their mission really guided this, that the priority was for fast, useful access to information, not news portals and directories and other things. And that alignment to the mission helped Google dominate search, where nobody uses any of those other search engines that existed in 25 years ago when Google was first starting out. They've put them all out of business, or at least they're not making much revenue. That's for sure. Again, Amazon, and we talked a little bit about Amazon. Another example with Amazon is that with the rise of ebooks, because they started out just selling physical books, but then when ebooks became a thing, Amazon wanted to make sure that they could create a seamless experience with their customers. And so they launched the Kindle, which really is one of the dominant ways that people read today, even more so than physical books. And Amazon famously keeps an empty chair in executive meetings. And this chair symbolizes the customer because that is a core part of their mission, reminding leaders that every decision should be customer centric. And that just helps embed the mission in employees' minds at Amazon. I mean, it's not, companies need to develop a mission, vision, and value, but then examples like this, you need to figure out how you make it living and active and become part of the employee culture. Vision is creating a compelling future. The mission is about present. What are we doing? What is our purpose today? The vision is about where are we going in the future? What is the long-term destination that inspires us? And having a compelling mission gives employees a reason to stretch beyond the status quo, a reason to dream of things bigger. It's also a great recruiting tool. A mission, vision, and value statement really helps you recruit, helps align the people who are coming to your organization. And for younger employees, this is even more critical. They really, most young employees want to be with an organization where they really buy into the mission, the vision, and the values. And the vision acts as a North Star, as a guidepost for leaders when making long range investments and strategic decisions that are years down the road. The vision is what drives that strategy and those investments. Companies without a vision really risk complacency. They may execute well today, but if you haven't really articulated where are we going in the future, you can atrophy and really not be successful. Jack Welch said, good business leaders create a vision, articulate the vision, passionately own the vision, and relentlessly drive it to completion. which means repeating it often, making certain that strategies and long-term decisions are in line with the vision, and making sure that all employees understand the vision and buy into the vision. So we talked about Google's mission a little earlier. Their vision is to provide access to the world's information in one click. And they're getting really close. I don't know that they're entirely there yet, but that's their vision. IKEA, their mission to create a better everyday life for people. Their vision to offer a wide range of well-designed functional home furnishing products at prices so low that as many people as possible will be able to afford them. Nike, mission to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. And they define an athlete that if you have a body, you are an athlete. So they're not just talking about professional athletes. And their vision to remain the most authentic, connected, and distinctive brand. And you'll see nothing in their mission or vision is limited to shoes. And a significant percentage of Nike's revenue comes from non-shoe product. And that's on purpose because of how they've laid out their mission and their vision. So when managers at Nike, when managers decided to invest in initiatives, they consistently use the mission test. Does this inspire athletes and innovate in a way that matters? So Flyknit knit technology wasn't just about lighter shoes. It was about reducing waste and improving athlete performance. Employees rallied around the innovation because it aligned with both inspiration and authenticity. So when marketing managers, they often ask themselves inside of Nike, are we inspiring every athlete, not just professionals? And again, that's part of their vision or mission. And they had a statement in 2012, Find Your Greatness campaign, which really celebrated everyday people who were running, playing, and exercising. And employees at all levels, from designers to store associates, could connect their work to inspiring all athletes. And that's really what Nike's trying to do. So that caused the product team to develop other products. They've come out with lightweight, breathable hijabs for Muslim female athletes, swimsuits that include drag-reducing fabrics, bonds, seams, and streamlined fits, and apparel using sustainable fabrics that can be easily recycled. So values. So we talked about mission, we talked about vision. Values is how do we work? What is the way that we work? The CEO of PepsiCo said that values are just as important as performance. We hold ourselves to the highest standards of both. So PepsiCo values care for customers, sell only products we can be proud of, speak with truth and candor, balance short-term and long-term, win with diversity and inclusion, and respect others and succeed together. So those are PepsiCo's values. So at PepsiCo, merit increases, promotions, and bonuses are not only tied to revenue, profit, and operational efficiency, but are also aligned to employee engagement results, sustainability metrics, diversity metrics, and a 360-degree survey process where they ask every employee's boss, peers, and subordinates to evaluate how the employee is living the PepsiCo values. And so at PepsiCo, if you're a general manager over a region and your sales and profitability are going through the roof, but your employee engagement results, the 360-degree survey results say you're not doing it according to PepsiCo values, your job is in jeopardy. And they fire people, even though they're hitting all of the financial metrics or all the other metrics that would indicate whether or not an employee is being successful. They will still fire people who are enormously successful on the metrics, on the operational and financial metrics, but are failing on the values metrics. And and that's how the PepsiCo culture has been so aligned to not only their mission and vision, but their values as well. Many companies, including Microsoft, Google, Amazon, P&G, Johnson Johnson, Unilever, and Salesforce, evaluate employees not only on what they achieve, but how they achieve those results. And values should outline how employees should achieve results. And I believe that it really, for a company to be successful in the long term, they need to value both, not only what employees accomplish, but how they accomplish it, and that they are equally important. Johnson and Johnson, many years ago in the Tylenol crisis, one of J&J's values is put customers' health and safety above profits. So when cyanide-laced Tylenol capsules killed 7 people, J&J immediately recalled 31 million bottles nationwide immediately. And the CEO was told that they were doing this well after they had already started the recall process. Because of the values, everybody knew that was the right thing to do. And although it cost them over $100 million, they didn't even think about it. They didn't think about the cost because that was a core value that they all bought in, and had a lot of smaller examples where they had done things that cost them money, but was putting the customer's health and safety above profits. One of Starbucks' values is creating a culture of warmth and belonging. And so several years ago, when there were 2 men waiting at a table for a business meeting, they hadn't ordered anything, and a store employee asked them to leave. And when they didn't, the store manager compounded the problem by calling the police. That didn't align to Starbucks values. And the CEO immediately closed all the stores for a day of training, specifically on this value, but on all of Starbucks values, because they wanted to make sure that every employee understood their values and lived their values, and really made decisions that were in keeping with Starbucks values. And of course, I can't even imagine how much money that cost them to close all of their stores for one day, but they did it immediately. Mission and vision and values really create your culture. Every company has a culture. Every company. And some companies don't like their culture. And the way that you take control of your culture is through mission, vision, and values, and driving that through the organization and reinforcing it day after day after day. That's how you manage your culture. So culture, in 2007, Nokia was the market leader at selling 437 million phones. Motorola was in second place. Samsung was in third place at 161 million. And Apple in 2007 sold less than 2 million phones. They were not even on the radar in 2007 in the cell phone business. Well, Nokia's culture was risk adverse, political, and slow. Because leaders often shot the messenger, employees were feared speaking truth to leaders. And they were centered on market share and carrier relationships and were not focused on the end user experience. Motorola had a slow hierarchical decision-making culture that was really engineering focused. The engineers really ruled Motorola, and they undervalued software design and the user experience. Samsung was fast, adaptive, aggressive, and engineering driven, and willing to be a fast follower. They were not focused on innovation, but they had a strong discipline and hierarchy, and with speed and competitiveness baked in. And then Apple was challenging the status quo and was obsessed with design, simplicity, and the customer experience. And if you look at the mission, vision, and values of Apple, you can see that. I'm not certain that I couldn't find a record of the mission, vision, and values of those other three organizations. I think that their cultures just kind of evolved. And of course, Motorola and Nokia aren't much in the cell phone business today. Apple is the dominant leader, and then Samsung, because they basically copy everything that Apple does and are just a little later to market but lower cost, is the number two provider. And so understanding what you want your culture to be, putting together your mission and vision and values to make sure that you're driving the culture to be what you think it needs to be is just critically important. Again, Apple's mission we talked about at the end user experience. Apple's vision: bring the best personal technology experience to students, educators, creatives, and consumers worldwide. And then their values: innovation, simplicity, privacy and security, accessibility, inclusion and diversity, environmental responsibility, and education and empowerment. So we've talked about Google's mission. Uh, Larry, the co-founder of Google, was looking at search results one Friday afternoon, and the ads that he was seeing as he was putting in different search results were not remotely relevant to what he was searching for. And so he printed off the ads, wrote the problem he saw, and just put it on the bulletin board. Some engineers saw it and fixed it over the weekend, and they weren't even on the advertising team. It wasn't their job. But because the culture is so strong in making the world's information universally accessible and useful, those engineers, for fun over the weekend, decided to fix the problem that Larry had identified on a Friday afternoon. So again, mission: why we exist. Again, it helps drive the company culture. The mission grounds employees in a shared purpose. It tells them why we come to work and how their daily contributions connect to something bigger. There's a company that I work with that is in the medical um, medical temporary labor space, where they're sending professionals to hospitals, to help supplement their need. But they specialize in the cleanliness of operating rooms, and so their mission is to eliminate infections in operating rooms. So if you're a staffing company, you can not articulate your mission and you just hire people and send them to hospitals and they go. But I think it's really powerful the way that they've defined their mission, and it helps everybody in the organization, including the temporaries that they're hiring, to understand why we exist. And we exist because infection is actually one of the largest causes of death in the United States. And their mission is to provide the expertise on how to eliminate those infections by making sure the operating room is as clean and sterile as possible. And I think it's just really powerful when you can help all of your employees and people you're recruiting to become your employees understand your mission. Vision: where are we going? It also that it creates that inspiration. Where are we going in the future? What do we think we're going to do in the future? It's interesting. Tesla, they're obviously today in the electric car business, but that's not where their vision is. Their vision is that they're going to be in the totally autonomous robot business. And car just happens to be the first step in that vision. And so painting that vision of, yeah, our mission is why we exist today, but where are we going? What are we going to do? IKEA's vision to create a better everyday life for people fuels a culture of affordability, design thinking, and global inclusivity. Values, how we act, that the values really set the behavioral standards to drive the culture. They are the rules of the road. How should people act? Southwest Airlines, one of their core values is warrior spirit, servant heart, and fun-loving attitude. And that value drives its culture of humor, teamwork, and putting employees first. So after 9/11, when most airlines laid off all of their staff, Southwest didn't. They chose to keep everybody employed at a substantial cost to the organization, but that was important to them from a values perspective because of their value and how much of a family culture they were trying to inspire. Another one of my favorite stories of Southwest is, one of the crew that was cleaning the airplanes one time, and the airplanes were kind of parked side by side. And it was a young kid, college kid who was working, for Southwest Airlines while he was putting himself through college. And one of his buddies was in the other plane, and so he decided to moon his buddy in the other plane. And he didn't realize that there were some customers on a third plane that could actually see this. And one of the customers wrote the CEO a letter, really saying, this was totally inappropriate. And they definitely counseled that employee that it was inappropriate. But I love the response, the letter that the CEO wrote back to the customer was, you're right, this is inappropriate. And we're really sorry that you caught us with our pants down, and it won't happen again. And, that's just part of the humor and the spirit, and has become, a well-known story in Southwest to kind of illustrate that, yeah, we don't want to do things that are wrong. You can't do that again. But, we're a family culture, and we definitely want our employees to have fun while they're at work. So it needs, to keep mission and vision and values alive, it needs to be embedded in daily communication. Leaders must repeat and reinforce mission, vision, value in town halls, team meetings, and one-on-ones. I think I certainly feel this way, and I know a lot of CEOs who feel this way, that they're like, I can say something 100 times and I can't stop. I need to say it 100 more. If it's really, really important, that being repetitive about driving the core beliefs, the mission and the vision and the values of the organization, I need to do it every day. And I'll be lucky if it sinks into, half the employees, even if I say it every day. The mission, vision, value needs to be used to explain decisions as well. Help people understand why we chose a specific path. Companies I work with where the leaders are constantly talking about the mission and vision and values, it helps employees understand how the leadership is thinking and why they made the decisions they made, even though they may not agree with them. If the leaders can help people understand those decisions and tie them back to the mission and the vision, then it helps employees accept the decisions, understand, and often become motivated to help implement those decisions. You need to connect mission, vision, value to performance management. Again, employees need to be evaluated not only on what they achieve, but on how they achieve it. And making living the values part of performance reviews, promotions, and bonuses is important. And if you ever make the mistake of promoting somebody who isn't living the values, and you'll usually hear about it, and you'll hear that feedback, and you need to go figure out how to resolve that issue pretty quickly, because it's important for companies' cultures for the decisions and who's getting rewarded in the company be aligned with the mission and the vision and the values. And having a 360-degree feedback process is a great way to do that as well, because that really gives you some good information to help understand who's living the values and who isn't, and then help you coach and counsel and train and develop those who aren't living the values. And then it's good to reinforce this in hiring and onboarding. Recruit for values, not just technical fit. Culture fit and values fit is very important. I think that the way to do that is to really have a structured interview process. I mean, many of us have been interviewing for years and years and years, and we kind of, don't really think a whole lot about the interview before we interview. But I think it's much better if you really think through what are the questions that I'm going to ask. And it doesn't mean you can never deviate from those questions, but to really think about and design questions ahead of time that help you recruit for a cultural fit and a values fit to your organization. And then during onboarding, teach new hires about the mission, vision, and value and the stories. And here's the decisions we made and why we made them and how they aligned with the mission, vision, and value. And maybe some stories where, we made some decisions that weren't aligned. And here's how it didn't work out. But really taking the onboarding and orientation process seriously really helps you manage your culture and helps new employees understand the mission, vision, and values as well. Again, stories are really important. Celebrating things that happen that reinforce the mission and vision and values and communicating them in newsletters, town halls, internet postings, and recognition programs. I work with a company that every single town hall, when they have an all-employee meeting, they're highlighting employees who live the values and giving away awards to those employees. But that really helps educate everybody on making the mission and the vision and the values tangible and really understand, oh, okay, that's what that employee or that team did. And that's why the leaders in the company are helping us understand how that was aligned with the mission and the vision and the values. Train managers to be ambassadors and culture carriers. Give them scripts and tools and expectations on coaching their team on the mission and vision and value. Hold them accountable for reinforcing that. Do engagement surveys, all employee surveys, where you're asking employees about the mission and vision and value, and then give feedback to managers on how their team is rating their understanding and the team's work on its alignment to the mission and vision and values. It can be very, very important in driving your culture the way that you want it to be. You also need to align systems and policies. Make sure that the HR, finance, and operational policies don't contradict with the values. If a company claims to value work-life balance, but everybody who's getting promoted are those that are working 80 hours a week, it's not congruent. It doesn't mean that, maybe you need to change your value. If you really just value hard work and 80-hour weeks, change that. But don't have a misalignment, because then they'll throw the baby out with the bathwater, and they won't really buy into anything you say around mission and vision and values if your employees detect a disconnect. If a company claims to value teamwork, but only rewards individual results, then there's a disconnect. You need to look for those types of disconnects and make sure that the policies and procedures are aligned with your mission and vision and values. So, talk about them constantly, embed them into reviews, back them up with tough decisions, and celebrate employee stories to bring them to life. Culture isn't what you say, It's what employees see, feel, and experience every day. So just putting together a mission, vision, values, putting together posters and putting them up off the wall, you really haven't accomplished anything. You need to make sure that you're doing all these other things that we talked about to make sure that that everything the company's doing as much as possible is aligned with your mission and vision and values. And that's how you will manage your culture and get it going, have your company culture be what you want it to be. So any questions that anybody has at this point?
So, Tom, we do have a question. So the question is, I'm the owner of a private company, $50-100 million. So I'm kind of a small, medium-sized company. We don't have a mission, vision, or value statements. What's the process of creating that? Is that something that I do as the owner, or do I involve my leadership team? How do I go about doing that?
Yeah, I think the more people you can involve in the process, the better. Now, obviously, you know, even a medium to small sized company, getting every single employee involved might be a little more difficult. But I think what I have found to be most successful is for the owner, the CEO, and the leadership team start having these conversations and start drafting it. And then it's good to get a broader group involved. Maybe you have some focus groups, you get some input from a broader base of employees and get their input. And then maybe even, and maybe even broader than that. And then bring all of that input back and have the CEO and the leadership team finalize it. But the more people that you can get involved, it will make it a better product for sure as well. The more information you gather from a broader set of employees, and then them knowing that they have at least had some input. Not everybody can be in the room when you totally finalize this, but the broader the group that you can involve in as you put together your mission and vision and values, the better off you are.
We had a good follow-up comment to that. They said the risk of including employees is that many people may be involved that aren't actually a culture fit or have job competency.
Yeah, and so you get their input. It doesn't mean they get a final vote. The final vote is probably just the CEO or the owner and the leadership team, however you define that. But it may help you understand um, how much change you may need to have happen in your organization as once you put together the final version of the mission, vision, values. It'll help you understand who should be on the bus and maybe who shouldn't be on the bus. And so I think that input is always good, but certainly ultimately the owner or the CEO has to make the final decision. If they can get their entire leadership team aligned, they're better off. But if they can't, sometimes the CEO and half of the leadership team are aligned, and it may mean that you may need to change some of the leadership team so that ultimately all of the leadership team is aligned, and then you start working on the broader employee base. Organizations, you're never going to get 100%, but organizations that can get the vast majority of the entire employee base aligned to the mission and vision and values are usually much more successful than companies that are not able to do that.
Excellent. And we had another question. What's the time frame for creating a mission, vision, and values? For example, with a startup company who is still finding direction, would it be too early?
I don't think it's ever too early. You can always change, your mission and vision and values as you evolve. But, once you have your first employee, I think it's good to make sure that, the two or three or four of you are at least aligned. And then, it'll evolve and may change as you get bigger. But and certainly the bigger you are, the more important it is because three or four people probably may not have to have a formal document to all be aligned because they're spending all day every day with each other. But and certainly the larger the circle, the more important. But even a startup, with three or four people, I think it's probably good to start having those discussions. And then as you expand and as you hire employees, you're aligned on what the mission and vision and values are, and you're only bringing on employees that are aligned with the mission and vision and values.
Okay, I think that covers the questions that we have today. Just a reminder, if you have a specific question you'd like to reach out to Tom directly, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to spend some time with you to discuss your situation. Thank you for attending today. Just as a reminder, this webinar and previous webinars for Preferred CFO can be accessed on the YouTube channel, YouTube, and go search on Preferred CFO, and you can see the previous webinars that we've hosted. We once again thank you again for your attendance, and we hope everybody has a very happy holiday season.